Hey everyone, welcome to the weekly Wrangle. Today I'm joined by the one and only Yonni de Haar. Yonni is a fantastic Houdini artist, and he's been helping me out with a lot of projects at CG Forge. Been really grateful to have him, and thanks for joining the Wrangle here, Yonni. It's good to have you.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm excited to get started.
Yeah, before we went live here, before we started recording, we're talking a little bit about tea. You guys might not know that both Yoni and I are big tea enthusiasts. Yoni, you're saying your favorite is Yokoro, if I said that correctly, or Gyokoro, something like that.
Uh,
It's like a green tea from Japan, right?
yeah, it's kind of like sencha, which is their common green tea, but
Mhm.
like slightly high quality. It's very umami kind of like, and it's very shaded, so it draws a lot of nutrients from the soil. So you get that like really earthy, grassy kind of flavor. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, absolutely my favorite.
Yeah, and if you guys haven't ever gotten into tea, I tell you what, it's a whole world, a whole rabbit hole to get into. It's a lot of fun. You can actually change the flavor of the tea based on if it has shade or if bugs bite it, or if you have apparently there's some strands of tea where they actually train monkeys to go up and pick it at the top of trees, like monkey picked white tea, and it's a pretty cool little hobby to get into. But you were drinking that in, was it Kyoto? Is that where you were, or no? Where were you at when that was
Yeah, in
happening?
Kyoto.
Kyoto, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I was in Kyoto. It was like beautiful trip. And yeah, went to a lot of tea houses, tea stalls, brought a lot back home. I think I bought a kilo of tea back from Japan. Uh,
Nice.
very excessive. But it went through quicker than I thought. But yeah, beautiful trip. I really, really impressed with Japan. Such a beautiful country. And yeah, amazing overall. Like it's such a nice place to go to because you have that real, um, you have beautiful nature and then beautiful culture like architecture and traditions and things. So it's a nice balance of like different things to do, kind of like, if that makes sense. Like it's not
Yeah.
just a city trip, it's also nature, it's also culture, it's also, yeah, just very distinct kind of like. I love these places that have a lot of identity, or like a lot of, I don't know, where you feel like you're in a different place, like yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, highly recommend if you've never been.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, because it sounds like you've really gotten to travel to a lot of different places in the world. I mean, has this been just kind of on vacation, or have you lived in a lot of different areas as well?
Yeah, I think part of it being Dutch is like my country's so small that kind of we tend to go like outside the country. Also being in Europe and having lots of really like small countries. So, like if I drive from my hometown to Germany, it's like 30 minutes. So you kind of get used to this idea of going abroad. Like, I guess when you're from a really big country, it's a bit harder. Like, you
Yeah.
live in the US, you can fly
Well, you got
6 hours in
Canada,
your
you
own
got
country.
Mexico, right?
Yeah.
That's all the world is. But no,
Yes.
it's much bigger than that.
Exactly. So it was very much that. And then I think, yeah, I'd done a bit of traveling and then I moved abroad as well. So I think first time I moved abroad was to London. And then once you kind of get the hang of it, it gets easier and easier to go abroad, I think.
Nice.
Um,
Is that
yeah.
something that when you decided that you wanted to do CGI and you wanted to be a 3D artist, I have a friend of mine who specifically went into it because he wanted to have a career that he could work remotely for, and then he could just be anywhere in the world he wants to get to travel, see things. Was that part of your motivation for getting into CGI, or was that just a happy accident that it allows you to do more of that travel?
Yeah, no, I didn't get into it for it specifically. I did move to London for it. Like I always wanted to move to Berlin. I thought it was a really cool place. And then when I wanted to leave Amsterdam, I was just looking at, studios like globally, well, mainly Europe, but yeah, kind of abroad. And I kept bumping into like really cool studios, and they were all London. So it was a bit like, I never really thought about moving to the UK at all, but I was like, there must be something cool about London that all these studios are kind of there. So
Mm-hmm.
I applied for like a job there, and I got like a 3-month contract at Field, and that's kind of when the journey started. And actually, then when I moved afterwards, I lived there 4 years, and then I moved to Madrid, which was just before COVID hit. And I remember it was still quite difficult to work remote back then. So in London, I was always booked, and I remember I moved, and it was suddenly like, oh, it's actually quite hard to get remote working. So I flew back a few times, and then the pandemic hit, and then it became really easy to work remotely. So yeah, no, that's been quite interesting about it. Yeah.
Nice. I mean, from all the different places you've lived, do you have any particular favorites that you like to go back to one of these days?
Yeah, I love Madrid. Obviously, I'm moving back there in a week, and then I really loved Hong Kong because Hong Kong is such a crazy place. Like when you get there, it's just so different from anywhere else you've been. Like when I was moving, I thought it would kind of be New York with like an Asian twist. But it's like so. It's just culturally so different. Like it's incredibly like Asian Chinese kind of as a as a cultural place. Like it feels very Asian. It doesn't feel super Western, but it does have the convenience of like, you can speak English there. Everything with the government is in English. Like, so it has the easy bit, but you still feel like in a very distinct, different place, which is very nice. And the contrast is just crazy. Like when you're on Hong Kong Island, it's just like the most dense city in the world. Like it's just skyscrapers wherever you go. Yeah. And then you walk 10 minutes and you're in the middle of the jungle. Like it's just nature, like proper nature. Like you see snakes there and like, it's really, it's beautiful. You jump in a taxi for 20 minutes. You're on like a tropical beach. It's really, it's a very nice place. Really beautiful.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess getting into a bit more of your background. So how long have you been doing CGI for? And like, where did you start? And how did all of this come about for you in general?
I've been working, I think over 10 years now. I don't know the exact years, but I think 10, 12, something like that. I kind of rolled into it from studying. So I never knew what I wanted to do. And then my sister was just like, whenever you do work for anything, it's behind a computer. So maybe you should do something with computers. And then I signed up for, how do you call it? Like, we call it informatica in Dutch. It's like computer sciences kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then in the introduction week, I switched to kind of the design course because everyone was a bit like, I feel you will fit more in design. And I was a bit like, well, I still don't really know what to do. So maybe I should. So I switched. And obviously doing that, I kind of got into motion design in 3D and things like that. Then I did my graduation at a studio in Amsterdam and did a lot of like live events, like VJing and things. So I did a bit of VJing in clubs and live things like that, which was quite fun. And then in London, it was mainly motion design. So I started mainly like a bit more 2D, or kind of generalist, but yeah, like slightly more 2D. And then eventually more 3D. Then I learned Houdini during a project. So I was kind of forced to use it because I had to do like liquids and cinema 4D, which is not really working out. And I was like, I have to do something. I have to deliver an animatic. So I kind of just had to pick it up. And then I really loved it because it's so logical. And yeah, ever since I stuck mainly with 3D motion design.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. I think a lot of people kind of take this road to where they are. That's not always like, it's not like everyone always knows where they're going, right? I think sometimes that's a big illusion that people have is like, oh, well, back then when I was 10 years old, I knew exactly what I was doing. It's like, no. I think a lot of times you discover that over time. And it sounds like that's what happened with you. It's like, hey, I tried a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I had some fun over here doing some, DJing and dabbling with some music visuals. And then all of a sudden, what do you know? I'm in Cinema 4D. And then all of a sudden, what do you know? I'm doing fluid simulations. And I think it's cool. And I think that's a big reason why people who are in that stage should really not undervalue having fun and following the things that naturally interest them. Because when you do that, I feel like you're more likely to have these sort of happenstance things that motivate you and set you in the right direction or send you in this way that's right for you. Yeah, I think oftentimes when people are coming up, it's too stressful. It's like all these different stresses come in and they start robbing you of that passion, that joy when you're coming up and discovering. And that's I think it's a really important process to preserve as you're going through life.
Yeah, and I think it's also kind of like nonstop development because obviously market's always changing, the world is always changing. So it's kind of, I think at a certain point you figure out kind of like the, maybe deeper is not the right word, but like the high level themes that kind of work really well for you. So for me, it's really designing systems, and that obviously I like Houdini because it's like flow charts, you create little systems and things, but that also translates to other things. So it's not necessarily that this is always the canvas, like the output, but it's at a certain point you realize what kind of workflows you're good at and kind of what, on a higher level, kind of what types of creations you're good at. Like, are you really good at like hand crafting things and doing things frame by frame? Or are you more like a systems creator like me? Or I don't know, at a certain point, all that makes sense. And then you can make better choices, I find, because otherwise you get too caught up in the tech, I find sometimes, where the tech is always easy to pick up, I find personally, but yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, if it follows that, it's kind of that like, what's that deeper like task, that deeper thing you enjoy doing? It's not necessarily about the software or, like you said, the specifics as much as it is about like, I like making systems. Or, looking back on, my trajectory, I started teaching when I was about 15 years old. I've taught drum set to a lot of different people, when I was growing up. But like, teaching in general, it's like teaching what? Well, what doesn't matter sometimes as much as the process itself, that thing, like you said, creating systems, teaching or working with people, whatever it is,
Yeah,
Nice.
100%. Yeah.
So I want to get into some of the kind of hot topics of today. And one of those topics right now is the fact that it seems like CGI as an industry has generally waned a little bit. It seems like there's a lot less opportunity, especially for VFX, movies, TV. And there's been a major downturn in employment. And I know there's a lot of people out there right now that are really kind of discouraged, and a lot of people that are, like obviously concerned and upset about and afraid of what's coming up in the future. So, from your perspective, do you see it that way, or where do you think things currently are, and where might things develop into the future, in your opinion?
Yeah, I can see it 100%. I think since a couple of years now. I think since I originally came back from Hong Kong first time, which is like 2 years ago, I think. Definitely massive downturn, which was also, there was a massive upturn just beforehand as well, which exaggerates it. Like I think during COVID, because there was less filming, there was a lot more demand for like 3D and CGI. So then I think at a certain point we were busier than ever, at least in my industry, more like motion design, advertisement kind of like industry. But now it's down. I think to me, and I'm kind of still trying to figure this out myself, so definitely don't take my word for it. But kind of what I picked up a little bit is like, obviously, in the last couple of years, a couple of trends have really happened, where one is obviously social media. So a lot of, like normally you would sell, like especially the classic example, back in the day, you have this VFX kind of piece, all like really nicely crafted during a TV commercial, big budgets. And obviously that has reduced a lot towards like YouTube content and kind of influencer style content, which always shouldn't look too professional because otherwise it looks like an ad. Where obviously it's still an ad, but like don't look too ad-like. So yeah, and I think in general, people are just way more accepting of lower quality. Like when I'm on YouTube now, I see a couple of like really good ads. Like for example, Wix has really nice ads. Like it's not 3D, but it's really nicely done in like 2D and some good film and stuff. But sometimes you see ads coming by as well that you're like, oh my God, like
Mhm.
Just, but if it does the job, then and they have to spend 10 times less the budget on it. Like from a business perspective, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I think to me, it seems a bit like 3D is just quite expensive for what you get. Like it takes a long time to create these things. Like you have to texture, light, model. Like it's just quite a time intensive thing where they can just sell the same amount of things with a 2D animation or just a shout out on a podcast or an email newsletter. So I think that's the thing. But yeah, maybe transitions a bit more into what's like content. So editing, animation for that. Product design, I think, is a bit bigger, but I'm not super involved in. But like from product design friends, I hear that it's quite a good market. So there might be more animation for that as well. Maybe some 3D. They always talk about AR and VR. When you ask ChatGPT, it loves XR. But I'm not entirely certain about that because I think the Vision Pro kind of got discontinued now. Like they're doing a lower budget model, but
they really gave it a good push. But I think with VR and AR, I mean, people have spent millions trying again and again. And, you know, how many times has AR, VR been the future when it's failed like 20 times? So it's like, how many times does it have to fail before people stop wanting to think that it's the future? Now, on one hand, I think that it hasn't totally failed. I still think there's still, to be fair, there's still a good market out there for VR and AR, but it's not like, when that first came out, it was like, hey, game over. This is going to be it. This is going to be the thing. And actually, I come to think of it, I think the first time that AR and VR came out, and don't quote me on this, but I think it was in the 80s, actually. It was all the way back in the 80s when this first, kind of became a fad. And then it had a huge revival. And then it kind of is on the end of the fad or of its fad phase, if you will, right now. And I wonder if there's going to be some parallels between AR, VR, and what we're experiencing right now with AI, right? Because a new technology comes out, it's, oh, this is everything. And then people don't know the limitations of it. And then one day you find the limitations and maybe it flatlines of what it can do, or, oh, AI is great for maybe concept art, but then when you want to have really fine-tuned control, maybe that's where it breaks down or whatever. But in the world of motion design, I mean, have you found a disproportionate effect because a lot of motion design goes for advertisements that maybe are opting for AI? Is it disproportionate for motion graphics versus, let's say, product development, where they want that specific knob right there and they want the fine-tuned control? Is that the main difference right now?
I think so. Like I've spoken to a few companies who were quite keen on doing AI visuals. Like this is more like the companies that are maybe a bit smaller in size and have less budgets. So I think when you aim for like the real high market, like very luxury kind of things, the brand is all important and therefore they're very precious about it. And therefore AI might be slightly trickier for them because they want to polish everything exactly as they want it. But if you have brands that are a bit heavier on content and just want to push out lots and lots of stuff, for them AI is quite interesting. I was recently talking with a family member and he sells cars. And for them, AI is very interesting because lots of car salesmen, they just get a car in, they want to take a photo of it. They obviously only have iPhones. They don't have like amazing cameras and stuff. Often the garage where they're at is not an amazing setting. So they kind of want a system where you can just take a photo of a car on your iPhone and it kind of transferred it. Like the angle and everything is the same because the car needs to be accurate, but you can transfer it to like a nice environment and a nice setting, and it just polishes everything a bit so it looks really professional, and therefore you sell more cars. Kind of like, so I think there is quite a bit of opportunity, but it is tricky. I actually tried it for a few brands to do AI visuals, and one literally like ghosted me. I thought it was like really nice, and they were like, "Oh, it's all too weird and abstract," and like, so I think a lot are not really like fully ready. But I think if you find the right market and the right brands for it, I think it could be really good. But yeah, that's more from like speaking from like a 3D advertisement kind of background. So, when you have like a nice product, like in a setting, that kind of work. I think if you do really more like 2D animation kind of work, it lacks the precision. And I'm not sure if it would, like maybe we'll get that precision, but I think it's a bit harder. Same with product design, I think.
Yeah.
It's a bit harder to get that real precision in there. And it like you could get something quite generic, but quite often for a product, for a digital product, you want something that is just very accurate, and therefore AI currently lacks accuracy and consistency. That's the two main thing where it struggles a bit. But I also really love it, like general, like also from a high level, like the big scope in society, I think is very exciting and promising. And
well, like you were saying earlier, we have such a slow medium. It's so slow. I mean, compare the amount of time it takes to make a watercolor painting versus a 3D render. I mean, you can make a watercolor painting in 2 hours. So for that artist, they're able to create a finished product in 2 hours. And for a musician, I mean, you can literally just play in real time and kind of jam and riff and have somewhat of a song in real time, right? But for CGI artists, expect at least a month minimum, and then maybe it's going to reach that high quality that you want to see. And it's so slow compared to the other art mediums. And I think that's something that sometimes people forget about. So if AI can speed that up and get more iterations and kind of bring it more in line with the speed of other art mediums, in some ways, it could be actually a new renaissance for CGI, if you look at it that way, because it's able to free up more ideas, more people, more TV shows that are able to be created. And, I'm of the opinion, specifically when it comes to like TV and let's say VFX as an example, that there is currently still a lack of really good shows people want to see. Like a major lack of it. I mean, you have a lot of content that's being made, but how much of it is good content? How much of it is interesting stuff that you would want to see? And I still think there's a major gap in people's appetite versus what's there. And so, take AI and speed up the medium and maybe get more iterations. Ironically, it could actually increase the demand if it's used in the right way and create more of a industry demand, more of a boom. And I haven't heard a lot of people talking about that side of the coin when it comes to AI, but I think it's interesting. It's important to recognize. And on one hand, I think currently it's maybe like convincing some companies to fire people and try out what it's like to be a downsized team doing this. But in the long run, who knows? Maybe actually can increase demand, ironically. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel with AI, it's so difficult to predict the future because it's so quickly evolving. And I was recently reading a book about it as well, and they described how it's a completely separate form of intelligence that we develop. Like it doesn't work along the lines of human intelligence, and therefore we can't really predict it in the future in a way because it's a completely separate form of intelligence. Like it doesn't think along human kind of intelligence. Like it's such a strange concept in a way. And so I think, that's one bit. The second bit, I think short term, it really reminds me a little bit of, when the GPU renders just came out first.
Yeah.
You had like Octane render, and then beforehand it was always like massive studios who were working on 3D renders because they had render farms. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly freelancers were doing 3D projects on their own, or like really small teams. I think short term, that might be an effect of AI, that you can everything can become a little bit high level because it's easier to do a little bit of copywriting now to write to your clients. It's a bit easier to figure out how to do your own advertisement. Like it's easier to do your own like 3D renders, your texturing, like all that stuff. So maybe you can be like a one-person agency, like that I can foresee a bit short term. Long term, I find it very difficult to predict what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, because if you can be efficient with one person, then think about how it's possible to be efficient with multiple people that are also using those same exact tools. So to your point, great, you figured out the one man agency pipeline. But then what if you took that one person and you made 3 or 4 or 5 people doing the same exact thing? Well, all of a sudden, that agency is like a super agency, you know, to your point. So yeah, in the short term, I think as people discover, I agree. It's like you're going to see this crazy efficiency coming from people, but then that efficiency will eventually catch on to the group dynamic, and then that will be hard to, for one person to keep up with eventually, potentially.
Yeah,
But
I think so. And it could be way more effective as well. You saw that a lot with when these GPU renderers came out. You got these kind of niche kind of studios, like
mhm.
especially in London, you saw that a lot. Like, for example, Builders Club, or you have Future Deluxe, or I mean, it might have been around before, but I feel when those renderers came out, they really became quite big because also if it costs a lot, if you need a lot less people on the team, then suddenly things might become affordable for clients where beforehand the budget is just too high and very few clients want to, take that on. So that could be interesting. But yeah, it feels like it's a very quickly changing landscape at the moment. Like,
Yeah,
that's for sure.
yeah. So I noticed that lately you've been doing some cool stuff on Patreon with Comfy UI. Speaking of AI, how's that been? I mean, it looks like you've been getting into some really cool video generation stuff, and I personally haven't really took that study yet. So I'm really curious to know why Comfy UI and how is that different than the other options out there right now?
Yeah, so Comfy UI mainly works well as a tool. You can kind of see it as Houdini for AI. So it's node based, and you can just use all the models in there. So um, it's open source. You can import workflows. So a very handy thing about it is that you can export your workflows in JSON, or even when you render images from Comfy UI, they're PNGs, and you can just drag and drop them in Comfy UI and the whole workflow just opens. So you just get your workflow back. So that's very handy about it. Personally, I just prefer node-based tools. I
Yeah.
just find them a bit easier to read and see what's going on. So if you want to go to open source is not the right word. Flexible tools where you can make your custom workflows, because obviously you have Midjourney, but then you kind of only have some sliders and text input.
Mhm.
Similar with Kriya. Kriya is a lot like more versatile already. Like you can drop images in it, you can train checkpoints on it. Like it's in terms of that, it's actually already a step further. With Comfy UI, you can truly do kind of almost what you want. Like it's
Mhm.
very few limitations, which is really great. Yeah, quite often I use Kriya as well, just because it's easy. Like sometimes you're just like on your MacBook or your iPad and you just have some ideas and you can just go in your browser without like having to go on the PC and have to wait for ages. But yeah, it's a cool tool. And as I said, I generally find it really interesting. And I kind of got into it from a way that lots of designers were talking a lot about AI, but I felt many people didn't understand it very well on like a fundamental level.
Mhm.
So I kind of took a bit of time out to really understand AI kind of on a deeper level, and kind of what really happens under the hood, and how does this really work, and how does that then translate to your renders, and where are the issues, and how can you art direct like client work, and how far can you art direct like work, and what are different tools. So that's how I structured it with the fundamentals. So kind of how does it work on the hood and what creates a good prompt, because you need prompting for loads of things. And then it goes further into technical. So kind of modular, like how do different workflows work? So like text to image is one thing, image to image. You have control nets, so where you can use depth maps and things to generate renders. And then it goes into the application bit of like, okay, how do you then use this in a workflow? Like, how do you use it as a 3D artist? Do you do texturing, or use it as a render engine, or how do you use it for storyboarding or for video generation? So that's been kind of the whole idea with it. And it's been really fun.
That's
Like really,
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, I really got to check it out, honestly. um, yeah, because I mean, I've recently been thinking about doing a little bit more environments and, just having like a nice way to get a concept, or I'm going to get this environment. I want a nice layout that's cinematic. And I mean, I feel bad for concept artists because that's exactly what you would use a concept art for. But at the same time, fast iterations. Yeah, I mean, you know, it sounds like if you're familiar with Comfy UI, you can get a specific concept or thing that you're looking for, at least in a general area. Maybe use that, maybe get some texture maps out of it. I mean, how's the texturing side of things been with it?
Haven't done like mainly it's been mainly my exploration has been to create final images,
Hmm.
and especially for concept, it's been amazing. Like you can now just photo batch images. So recently, I had this like I have a lot of things on Pinterest. So I had like this really nice piece of architecture with arcs and things like that, and I was like, oh, I want like a bonsai tree in here. So I literally just like find a bonsai tree, or maybe I even generate it. I can't even remember, but you know, you just cut it out easier with AI as well in Photoshop. Like I find it's like one of the few things Photoshop is really good at with AI is like cutting objects out. So you just cut it out, you just chuck it on top, like it looks really rubbish. Like it looks really like photo bashed and rough. But
Yeah.
then you import it in Comfy UI and it just creates a depth map out of it, and then it regenerates an image based with that. And you can even chuck in other images that kind of references the style of it,
Hmm.
and that then uses that to create a final image. So like you can really get quite refined storyboards and renders and ideas out in like minutes, which
Yeah.
I think for real creativity, that's actually very useful, because I think there's this distinction between actual creativity and being artistic, you know, like the skill of drawing very well, or like, you know, like animating something very well. To me, that's more artistic, and I think creativity is more coming up with new ideas, new stories, and
Yeah.
um, yeah. So I think for creativity is really good. Maybe for being artistic, it's slightly less less good.
That makes sense. You know, it's kind of like, gosh, how many jazz musicians only know how to play covers, right? They've never made anything original in their lives. They've just, well, I like picking on jazz musicians, but it's kind of the same idea, right? It's like there's a difference between being super coordinated at your instrument versus like making a new song. That's a totally different thing that you're doing. So maybe kind of similar in this case. Like it's maybe not going to give you the most novel things, but you know, maybe you can create interesting combinations. I don't know, but it definitely is a time saver. It sounds like, and it sounds like it's giving you faster iterations during the early phases of a project, kind of keeping you high level, like you said. And well, and I think it's underappreciated too, the value of staying high level. Like, why is that such an important thing to do, or why is that a good thing, right? Um, I don't know. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, like 100%. I think if you can understand the high level dynamics of things, like I don't know, the world becomes a bit easier if that makes sense. Like I remember I was
Less
like,
torturous.
yeah, it was like so clueless. But I think it took me a very long time before I realized kind of like how businesses operate. For example, I was like reading the personal MBA, and he was like, "There's only five parts of like any business, which is like value creation, marketing, sales, value delivery, and finance." And I was like,
Hmm.
"Oh, this makes everything so easy." And then it's like, "Okay, what are we doing?" Like mainly we're doing marketing. If you know, if you're in 3D motion advertisement like me, if you're doing
Hmm.
film, then you're more in value delivery, obviously.
Yeah.
If you're in concept, you're more in value proposal. Like, but it makes it quite easy of like, okay, where am I in? And also, for example, if as a freelancer you want to get more work, it's kind of like, okay, which of these is not working? Like it nails down the search a bit, but you also get more of an understanding what clients actually hire you for. Like at the end of
Hmm.
the day, quite often
Yeah.
in my personal industry, again, it's different for people in VFX or film or things like that. But for mine, quite often they just want to have more leads, and therefore further
Yeah.
down the line, more sales and more revenue. So it's kind of like what's really important for me, like sometimes in a project, what I'm nitpicking over is just not important for the client at all. They just want their
Yeah.
products to look good. They just want them to look professional, and they just want people to get interested in that and either, you know, buy a product or sign up for an email list or something like that.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's very, yeah, like to me, it's very, very useful to learn high level skills. I think it's very underrated as well. Yeah.
So in that way, it's kind of like keeping high level keeps you wise in some ways, and it because then you realize like you don't lose track of what this is for, whatever that project is. Because I found the same thing. Like I've gotten into projects where I just dive straight into the details, and then a month later I step back and say, "What was this? What is it? What am I doing?" Right? And then all of a sudden you kind of lose the plot if you don't get high level now and then. It seems like. Well,
Yeah, 100%.
I think when you stay high level, you're able to, I think, exercise more of that creativity. I think people move on from the high level too quickly, and it ends up making work that is, I don't know, how would I say, maybe like just a derivative or less novel than what you get from staying in the high level zone longer before you dive into the details. I always try to, tell students, like if you're making a personal project or whatever it is, try to spend a little more time than you think you need in the outline phase, in the I need to go take a walk and think about how this is going to work, because 1,000 steps in the right direction is better than 10,000 steps in the wrong direction. And that's the high level wisdom that you get when you stay there for a minute and you don't just immediately start, going for it.
100%. And I think AI actually really helps with this because you can generate so many ideas so quickly that quite often I have a rough idea and then I keep generating, and that sparks new ideas and new ideas and new ideas. And then suddenly you end up in a very different path than you normally would do, but therefore the work becomes better. Like, to me, it's been very fascinating. And the velocity of where you can bring your ideas to life with. Like recently I was reading the Three-Body Problem. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's Not really yet. Amazing. What's and it's a great sci-fi book. It's on Netflix as well, the show, but it's kind of the idea of if aliens would evade, but like really well done. Like it sounds maybe cheesy, but it's so good. And anyway, like he talks about certain things in the scene and in the book about certain scenes and things. And now with AI, like if I would want to visualize that even just for myself, normally in 3D it just takes so long, where with AI it's just like, okay, let me quickly get a few ideas out, let me visualize this and this and this, and suddenly all these ideas come to life so easily. And I think especially with the momentum you have, that really helps, because quite often in 3D I notice, especially doing simulation, when you have to wait and wait, those liminal moments really kind of drag you back, where if you can keep the ideas quite real time, I think it's a nicer process and the ideas get better in a way as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. Absolutely. In general, when it comes to your artistic inspiration, do you have any particular genres, interests, things that are particularly interesting to you artistically right now that you're exploring?
Lots of things. In general, I quite like things very clean and minimalistic, like very kind of like, I don't know, Zen aesthetic is probably like the best word. Like I love Muji, for example, like it's all very clean, neat, organized. And in general with work, I also tend to go that way. Like if I have to create work that is very maximalist and like detail, it's also really not my thing. Like, I just tend to stay in kind of a clean
purity. You want clean, not chaos. It sounds like.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the foundations are also quite important quite often. So when I do more like 2D motion design, it's all about like animation principles, make things go smooth. Like if you're more playful character, a bit of overshoot, a bit of secondary motion. Like I think I do this all the time, but like quite often it's so easy to forget about the fundamentals, the foundations, where it's just so important. But like, I don't know, like I think as creators we get too excited and then we just go head into like a problem and then you forget about, what makes it work well.
Yeah.
So I think it's that like my Pinterest is full of like galleries, museums, kind of really nice, neat product designs, where you get the nice high focal length kind of like shots. There's lots of that. Yeah, yeah. So
Nice.
not one in specific, but a certain
Yeah.
overarching kind of theme in
That
specific.
makes sense. I mean, I didn't think it makes sense when you say it, but I like when you go to the fundamentals of like 2D animation and you hit it just right. There's this like clean, crisp feeling you get when you just have the animation like nice, like it's like, oh, it's almost like you got your tangents perfect. There's not a bump in the road with that animation curve, right? It's just this very clean feeling, crisp feeling that you get from it sometimes. It sounds like that essence is like appealing, and that's that a fun attribute to chase in a way.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. I think I really enjoy that as well, living in Asia, because in general, because they live in quite small places, like
Hmm.
spaces are very like clean, like organized,
That's true.
orderly, minimalistic. Quite, they use a lot of wood as well. At least in Hong Kong, they had lots of modern kind of places. There's lots of wood, natural elements, underlit light, like things like that. I really,
Yeah,
really like that kind of
that's a good
vibe.
point. Yeah,
Mm.
that's interesting. Um, so in general, here, getting to some of our last questions. So I'm always curious about what success looks like for you. And I know this answer has probably changed over the years, but like when you think of yourself as an artist and you say, this is what success looks like for me, do you have a version of that? Or is that something you're still trying to understand a bit?
Um, it's a good question. I think it definitely evolved over time. Like I think back in the day, it was maybe a bit more like having a certain style, like a certain uh, touch to your work. But I think nowadays it's actually more like based around life. Like I feel more like if you can craft a life that is very fulfilling for you, like if it's, um, I think that in a way is very important. Like I think um, at one point, I think it's not in a way of like, oh, I want to sit on the beach all day, kind of
Yeah.
like, but more like I think it's very much like living intentionally. And I think actually achieving a lot is very rewarding and kind of underrated. I think a lot of people always talk about retire when you're like 35 and stuff, but I think
Hmm.
actually the deeper kind of pleasure you get from achieving goals and feeling like you're growing and developing in life, I think is so it's quite an underrated thing. So I think when you hit that spot where you feel you're kind of on the right track. You're like you're growing, you're having a life that feels fulfilling and purposeful for you. I think to me that's the main goal and purpose of being a designer and being flexible. I think as well. Like we see now with the market, I think if you get too caught up in like this is what I do and that's it, kind of,
Hmm.
I think you're just setting yourself up for a harder time. And I mean, I get stuck in this sometimes as well. Like
Hmm.
sometimes it's hard to get out of your zone of comfort, kind of, and difficult to kind of think in a different way. But I think when you cultivate that skill, life just becomes a lot easier. So yeah, I would say that. I would say that. I think.
So maintaining that adaptability is key. It sounds like yeah, it makes sense, right? Like we're in tech and we're in art, two of the most like fluid, professions you could potentially get into, right? Like things change all the time. It's not like I don't know what a good example would be. It's not like taxi driving. Like taxi driving's been kind of the same thing for a while now.
Yeah.
It's
Or
fluid.
accounting.
What's that?
Or accounting. I was
Oh,
recently looking it
accounting.
up, and I was like,
Yeah.
all these principles come from like the 1700s or 1800s, and I was
Yeah.
like, motion design was literally not a thing. Like, what is it? Like, I would say maybe even 20 years ago, as motion design. Obviously, there was CG before and animation and
Hmm.
things like that, but like as it is now, it's so new
Yeah.
and it's changing so much. Like, I was from a 2D perspective, I was even thinking about it. It was like 2D animation was very long, like traditional, like animation, like cartoons and things.
Hmm.
Then it kind of became the infographic kind of era,
Yeah.
and now it's more like product design and like micro animations, web animations. So yeah, it just evolved so quick. So obviously you have no other choice than moving with the market and yeah.
would that be your primary advice for someone who is seeking a similar type of success as you, who wants to have that lifestyle, that fulfilling lifestyle of accomplishing things that's fluid and dynamic? Would you say adaptability is the number one thing to prioritize for someone that wants that kind of success?
Yeah, I think first of all, I wouldn't call my life like super successful in that way. I think it's more like something I very much realized. I
Yeah.
think I think that's yeah, like obviously with the market changing so much, I think that's something I've just been reflecting on a lot, and obviously doing meditation as well. It's something you really learn, and especially in the Vipassana tradition, it's all about changing. Like everything is changing from second to second to second, and kind of going with that flow instead of swimming against it. So yeah, it's something I kind of had to learn a bit, but I think that that would be one of my best advice, and learn business skills, I think,
Mm.
because as creatives, we're so, I don't know, like maybe naturally kind of hardwired on the other spectrum of business, I would say almost like this
Yeah.
is there, creatives are there kind of. But everything in life is eventually about it. Like if you want to live a life where you can just live, in peace, and you don't have to worry about money, and you just have financial success, it just makes everything easier. So if you can learn those skills, which again, I'm still learning. I would definitely not call myself an expert in this, but
Same
yeah,
here. Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I remember, and I've had a lot of musician friends and like a lot of other artist friends who have had this kind of tug of war of business and creativity in their head, and it's I don't understand how they are like on opposite ends of the spectrum, but there is something that is opposite about them. I still don't know exactly what that is, but maybe it's like pragmatic versus idealistic, and maybe that's the tug of war. I don't know. But I think that one thing that helped me with that battle personally was just realizing that, as an artist, it's not like you have to take money and place it more important than your artistic pursuits. And I think sometimes in our head, we kind of default to that. It's like, well, if I have to work on the bit or have to do this business stuff, well, that's going to be the most important thing in my life. And it's like, no, no, no. That could be number two. That could be number three. And that can support your art, and it doesn't have to be the thing that drives your motivations in the morning, right? It just has to be there so that the other thing doesn't suffer. And so that you have the option of doing this high level thing sustainably. But yeah, you're right. It's a thing. Like this is a big thing I think a lot of artists struggle with at some point or another.
yeah, yeah. And I think it's as you say, it's sometimes not very aligned, but I think they can go hand in hand. Like
Mhm.
if you certain artists, like for example, Vincent Swank, he does quite well, I think. I mean, I don't have insight in his finances, but like he has Patreon, he seems to have really good clients, and he's very artistic. Like he really has his own style. Like when you see his work, it's like, oh, that's Vincent Swank. Like he can instantly tell. So I think they can go hand in hand. But it's something we're not very naturally inclined to do, I think.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, definitely. Well, for people that want to follow your stuff, Yoni, where can they find it?
I'm on all the social medias with just my name, Yonni Haar. So it's youtube.com/Yonni. I still have some Houdini tutorials on there. Instagram, I post some AI stuff on there. I have a Patreon where you can find me with my full name. um, so yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
Awesome.
LinkedIn, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and I'll include a link as well in the video description as well if you guys are interested in joining Yoni's Patreon or checking out his Instagram and all that. So great. Well, thanks for joining me, Yoni. This is a very interesting conversation, a great way to kick off the very first CG Forge weekly Wrangle interview. Had a great time talking with you, man.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right. See ya.
See ya. Bye.